something about the port strategy.
Κύριε Υπουργέ, κύριε επικεφαλής του Γραφείου του Πρωθυπουργού στη Βόρεια Ελλάδα, κύριε Πρόεδρε του ΟΛΘ, κυρίες και κύριοι, εκλεκτοί προσκεκλημένοι, θα μου επιτρέψετε να απευθυνθώ στα αγγλικά. Μου ζήτησαν οι διοργανωτές για λόγους ευγένειας προς τους προσκεκλημένους μας, παρότι μου φαίνεται περίεργο στη Θεσσαλονίκη, ειδικά, να μιλάω αγγλικά σε κεντρική ομιλία. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need your translation. I was just checking to see if you are all well and awake, because Thessaloniki nights can keep you up very late. But I see you're all here, so that's a good sign. First of all, let me welcome you today at my hometown. It is a great privilege for me, as Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism, to host this very, very important meeting in my city. And the question is, was the city chosen after I was chosen as Commissioner of Transport and Tourism, or was it vice versa? We will never find out, from what I understand. However, I welcome you to what is, in my opinion, and not only mine, the most beautiful city in Greece. It is a city with cultural and archaeological landmarks spanning ancient Greek, Roman, and Byzantine history. And I'm really happy that you're here today to discuss about our ports, which for centuries have been the places that people, goods, and ideas have passed through on journeys that created Europe and shaped the world as we know it today. And you can certainly feel this at the Greek ports, like the port of Thessaloniki, which you will excuse me if I sound slightly biased, but this is where my vote would go for the most beautiful port. And indeed, throughout my responsibility as governor of this great region for 13 years, I worked very closely with the port of Thessaloniki. And this is why I now know firsthand the needs, the expectations, and the challenges that ports all across Europe are facing. Of course, other European ports impress me too, to be honest. From Rotterdam, that I visited last month, to Constanta, and from Turku to Barcelona, each and every port of Europe contributes to our economy, our security, our connectivity, and our shared European identity. They are places where logistics meet, where energy and digital clusters grow. And indeed, my friends, it is where Europe's supply chains gain their competitive edge. In the EU, ships carry 3.4 billion tons of goods, including energy, and almost 400 million passengers per year. They also make 2.2 million port calls. This adds up to 29.5 billion in gross value added, 400,000 direct jobs, and many more indirectly. But their very nature, ports are entry and exit points to our transport network. And for our supply chains and global trade, they shift roughly 75% of the EU's external trade, but also around a third of intra-EU cargo, giving them a key role within the single market and our trans-European transport network, the TEN-T. And last year, the EU introduced a new maritime dimension to this network, the European maritime space. It promotes short sea shipping routes, tighter port hinterland integration, and wider benefits, such as the deployment of renewable energy, alternative fuels, and digitally implemented solutions. I'm therefore very happy to see today Ms. Gesine Meissner, coordinator of the European Maritime Space, in this room. The coordinators have indeed a key role to ensuring a coordinated and timely completion of the TEN-T, which is also my top priority. Ladies and gentlemen, by hardwiring ports into high-capacity land corridors and cleaner sea routes, we are reducing today door-to-door costs, cutting down red tape, diversifying routing options in times of crisis, and moving forward the EU's 2050 transport emissions reduction target. These priorities are all reflected in ESPO's 2024 memorandum on a net zero, smart, resilient, and competitive Europe. And we strongly support these changes. Over the last decade, we have funded more than 280 projects with more than 3.5 billion euros, improving 150 ports in the European Union. And we are doing this because we rely on shipping and on the ports that make shipping possible. And we are fortunate that both have proved resilient. Just think back to COVID times, when ports calls continued keeping our economy going. Now ports are even more resilient. But this resilience, my friends, is being tested. Geopolitics, alongside technical and operational complexities, have created real challenges that you all know firsthand. We don't yet know exactly how the US position on international trade will impact global trade flows. But we know that this will change. The situation in the Red Sea continues to affect trade flows, in particular to the ports of the Mediterranean. Ports outside of the EU are stepping up their competitiveness. Our ports are having to reconsider security, both physical and digital, and to take a closer look at any foreign presence. Drug trafficking through our ports is a growing problem, and I'm thankful to the Ports Alliance for raising awareness of this very important matter. And then, of course, there is climate change and the challenges that required to both adapt and reduce. So I welcome ESPO's and its members' prioritization of decarbonization, repowering Europe and reducing pollution. We saw a historic agreement at IMO last month on global measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for shipping. It will be very important to make sure that this is formally adopted in October in the next meeting. Why? Because this, my friends, will create a level playing field, and therefore the European competitiveness will not be any more at risk. But there are also other challenges that are linked to the location of the ports: ice blocking conditions, highly seasonal demand, challenges associated with ports being located in the heart of densely populated areas. And of course, other challenges affecting ports serving small islands and ensuring connectivity. Our largest ports, with complex multi-terminal operating environments, face different challenges to those of specialist sports, focusing on energy or cruises, for example. And I'm certainly not going to downplay any of these challenges. We need to know what the exact challenges are in order to address them. And rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, we will address them. I hear you. I have seen the problems myself, and I want you to know that you have my full support. You also have my support when turning challenges into opportunities. We need to look for new business opportunities and business models, and focusing on clean energies is a good place to start. Ports are already energy hubs, but they have a critical role to play for alternative and renewable energy. Importing, producing, and supporting production, in particular for offshore wind. This way, ports will strengthen Europe's strategic autonomy and also help protect the environment. But they will also become more competitive. And I know how important this is to ESPO members. And I would like to assure you today, from my home city, Thessaloniki, and this very beautiful venue, that my top priority and the priority of the new Commission for the next 5 years is indeed competitiveness. We need to make sure that we do not have, or we do not put extra burdens to our ports, to our industries, and to the European economy. And this is something that I want to be very clear with you. And of course, I also see opportunities for other sectors as well, from digital applications to support optimal and secure port operations, to EU-produced port equipment and ship repair. And also, dear friends, shipbuilding. A couple of decades ago, 45% of ships were built in Europe. Today, only 5. We need to act now. Ladies and gentlemen, the new EU port strategy that we're working on will take all these new realities into account. And our efforts will be to turn them into opportunities. Since our last port strategy, in 2013, the market for port services have become regulated. State aid rules have supported investment, alongside funding from the Connecting Europe facility at the regional and cohesion funds. We have made huge strides in decarbonization and have mandatory targets now for providing electricity to vessels at port. But the world, and by the way, it is extraordinary what you have done as ports for electricity. You have stepped up, moved quickly, and you have started delivering. And I thank you for that. Because by having electricity in the ports for the vessels, not only do we help the environment, but also the health of the citizens that live near or close by our ports. But the world, my friend, does not stand still. So nor can we. So we are moving forward, developing this comprehensive new EU port strategy. And I'm doing so in close cooperation with the commissioners responsible for related policy areas, because this port strategy will be a comprehensive one. We will give answers to every single challenge that you are facing. Our strategy will embrace ongoing initiatives such as the European Ports Alliance against organized crime and drugs. And I want, again, to congratulate you for creating this alliance and exchanging information. And we will also link relevant cross-cutting initiatives, such as the Industrial Maritime Strategy, which we are also developing, and we will also present by the end of the year. The Clean Industrial Deal, the Ocean Pact, and the Internal Security Strategy. And we will, of course, continue pushing for the full integration of EU ports within the TEN-T, the Trans-European Transport Network. The strategy will indeed link competitiveness with resilience and with sustainability. And I'm really happy. I want to thank you for the opportunity you gave me last night to sit down and talk individually with each and every one of you, CEOs of the ports of Europe, to understand firsthand what the main challenges are in competitiveness, resilience, and sustainability, which, by the way, go hand in hand. This new EU port strategy will address security as well, including cybersecurity, door-to-door supply chains, economic independence, and the potential of digitalization and innovation. I already mentioned the opportunities in the energy transition, especially as hubs for production and import of clean energies. This will be reflected in the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan that we are preparing as well, which will be a mechanism on how to boost the production of alternative fuels. And of course, it will support the transition towards renewable and low-carbon fuels and infrastructure, with a particular focus on both the maritime and the aviation sectors. Now, the port strategy will also address labor and skill shortages, as well as safety, which I know is very, very important for ESPO. Ladies and gentlemen, modernizing port infrastructure, I know, and you know it, will require investment. I take note of your request for financial support for ports as they adapt. I will bear this in mind during the discussion that have already started on the next MFF, the next EU budget. For its part, the port strategy will look at how to focus on targeted funding from EU sources on emerging needs and challenges, and how to attract, because this is very important, private capital. We need to approach this, I'm sure you agree, in a smart way, without increasing regulatory burden, without duplicating efforts, or reinventing the wheel, and certainly with respect to port city citizens, the environment, and our common market. So as we move ahead with the EU port strategy, we want to hear from you. We want to launch a call for evidence shortly, but I would like to thank those of you who have already shared your proposals with us. And there is something else that I would like you to know. Those of you who know me from my previous posts in politics, there is one thing that I don't like, and that is unilateral decisions. I strongly believe that if we want to make a policy really matter and really work, we have to design and implement it together with the stakeholders, with the people, as I said yesterday, that have boots on the ground. Otherwise, we risk falling short, and this is not acceptable in our difficult geopolitical times. So rest assured that you all have a seat on the table, and we will co-design and implement this new EU port strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's ESPO Conference is indeed a timely opportunity for an open discussion on today's challenges and tomorrow's opportunities. I value ESPO, its wide and diverse membership, and the depth of expertise that you bring to the table. The conclusion of this conference will certainly feed into our reflections until later this year, when we will finally present this new port strategy. It is now time for a strategy that finds the right balance between the different needs and often competing solutions. Our approach must work for all ports, whether they are in the south or in the north, in the east or the west. We will give answers to all the challenges you face. And as I always like to do, I want us to think of the bigger picture too. Once we have European solutions that work for European ports and needs, we need to look at how they can be exported and established as the standards to be followed in other parts of the world. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the European Union is a pioneer. The European Union is a superpower, and it is about time now to show to the rest of the world that we have the vision, we have the plan, and we have the people to make sure that the European economy and the European societies will continue to grow and will continue to prosper. Thank you very much for your invitation. Welcome once again to Thessaloniki. I am sure that together we can make this happen. Thank you very much.